and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative. We will be looking at Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux. It was published as a serial between September 1909 and January 1910, and then it was released as one book in March in 1910. It was then adapted to screen several times over the period of time, and it was in fact adapted to a musical as well on West End and Broadway, as I'm sure you're well aware. But I obviously will be looking at the 2004 version, and of course I'll be looking at three things as I always do. How good is the film, how good is the book, and how well does the book take from the film. Now, this book, I mean, it's another Folio Society one, and it honestly is just absolutely beautiful. Let's see if I can find a picture. I mean, you've got like, it's just absolutely perfect. The edges are gorgeous, like the back is gorgeous, the front is gorgeous. The only thing I would say is when I was reading it, for some reason, I'm just going to put it to one side now, because when I was reading it, it was turning my hands orange. And I don't know why it was doing that. I don't know if I'm a sweaty person or what, but it literally was turning my hands orange as I was reading it. I was like looking at me like, didn't realise I was doing self-tan. But anyway, so let's start with the film, the musical. Now, it's just amazing. It honestly is. Like, I love the songs, I love the setting. I mean, I love Patrick Wilson. I genuinely adore that man. And he is just so, as Raoul, he's just perfection. The fact that he's always running off to save Christine, and he really does love her, and it's just, oh, it's so sweet. I mean, obviously, there are two small glitches in the film. Gerard Butler, he can sing and he can act. He just can't sing to the level that the main character, the Phantom of the Opera, maybe should be singing to. As I said, he's good. He's just not brilliant, if you know what I mean. And so sometimes, like, he'll try and hit a note, and I'll be like, oh, Gerard, you poor thing. I mean, you know, he's good. I just feel like they maybe could have cast that a little bit better. And also, the fact that basically in the film, the Phantom is grooming Christine, because essentially he starts singing to her when she's a child, and then starts grooming her to the point when she hits of age, he's then like, you're mine, I love you, you love me, you're gonna be mine forever, and live below the opera. And I'm like, that's a little bit problematic. I will discuss it later, but in the book, that's not the case. She's of age, and it's only been about 6 odd months. But yeah, it's a little bit problematic in the film, and I'm kind of sat there going, this ain't right. But for the most part, the film is honestly, it's absolutely spellbinding. And I know I say this about a lot of the musicals, but I genuinely, this is on my go-to musical list. The reason I probably don't go to the theatre as much as I would love is, one, it is quite expensive, and two, because I live in Leeds, there's only really the Leeds Grand Theatre, so it's kind of seeing what's on and whether or not I'm working. But honestly, like, Phantom of the Opera live on stage is another one, as well as Les Mis and Warhorse and all the rest, is another one that I really do want to see at some point. But honestly, the film is just perfect. Like, the nuances are really good, and as I said, Patrick Wilson, I love that guy. Like, honestly, when he's fighting the Phantom in the graveyard, like, and he's just in like a shirt and he's pantaloons or whatever you want to call it, and you're like, oh, I want someone to like fight to the death for me, basically. But it is such a good film, and I mean, I can watch this any day at all. I honestly could. I could watch it again and again and again, and it's one of my favourite musicals, and it gets a 7 out of 10 for me. As I said, it probably would get higher if it weren't for Gerard Butler's not quite hitting some of the higher notes, and the fact that it is grooming, 100% grooming. Now, the book, as I said before, it's another stunning version from Folio Society. I'm getting quite a little list up there. I've got Little Prince as well, which will be one of my episodes. It'll be one of my guest stars with my sister Nikki, actually, so that's sat there waiting. And I thoroughly enjoyed the story, despite my hands turning orange. The Phantom, I feel, in the book is a lot more layered than he is in the film. He is a lot more of a psycho in the book as well than he is in the film. Like, in the film, it's kind of like, oh, he was beaten as a child, he was disfigured as a child, and then he's grown up and he's, you know. But in the book, he's just more sort of like, no, this is me. I run it. This is what I want. And boo to the rest of you. You also see a lot more of the fractured side of relationships as well, as they deal with the love and the hate and the fine line in between. Like Christine and Raoul's love story in the film is just perfection. It's literally just like, you know, they knew each other as children, they reconnected, you know, when they saw each other at the opera, they fell in love, you know, and they build their relationship. And the book is a lot more fractured. It's a lot more sort of like love hate, sort of like, she's kind of going, no, I can't be with you. And he's like, but why can't you be with me? And then, you know, you've got the Phantom interfering with them. And it is a case of, you see as well the fractured relationships with everybody else. And you see sort of like the breakdown when people are trying to figure out, well, you've got this Phantom and he's, you know, declaring that this is my money and this is what we need to do. And you just kind of sat there going, okay, in the film, they kind of just, you know, accept it almost. But in the book, they seem a lot more worried, and they lose their mind a little bit. I mean, you also get as well a character called the Persian, which turns up in the book and you never hear of him in the film. But in the book, he complements the Phantom so well. Like, honestly, the two of them against each other is just brilliant. And I would have loved to see that in the film, but it is so good in the book as you're reading it and you read the history of the Persian and how he came to be with, you know, and hunting for the Phantom. It's not a particularly hard read either. It's a really good story. It's not a hard read, and I would definitely recommend this book as a 8 out of 10 for me. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not problematic because Christine is of age when, and it's only been like 6 months or so when the Phantom decides that he's going to make her his wife. I mean, that's still problematic and kidnapping and all of that, but it's not as bad. So let's go with the plot. So the film starts in Paris in 1919. And it's an older Raoul coming to the now disused Paris Opera House for an auction. The book starts in the Paris Opera House with La Sorelli. Again, it's another like French book, so I don't know why I do this to myself. So any pronunciations, please bear with me. I'll try and make it as painless as possible. But yeah, so the book starts in the Paris Opera House when all the events are taking place, and La Sorelli is preparing a speech for the patrons who are retiring, and this is where we kind of first hear about the Phantom. Now the film then fades to Paris 1817 and the beginnings of the Phantom of the Opera, and you've got that beautiful piece of music that I'm not going to try and sing, but everyone knows the Phantom of the Opera piece of music. Ugh. But the book straight away has a stagehand called Joseph Dye, and he's found hung. And that's straight away in the book. Like in the film, it happens much later. But in the film at this point, there is a singer called Carlotta, who is the main woman, and she's a diva. She has a tantrum and says she won't sing, she can't sing. So Madame Giry, who is like a completely different character in the book that she is in the film, pushes forward Christine, and she's been having lessons from the Angel of Music. The Angel of Music is the Phantom. Didn't take us that long to figure out. The book proceeds with the same night as Christine's debut performance that brings the house down. So the book and the film then have the debut performance. Christine sings, everyone goes, oh, she's amazing, she's fabulous. But it's not Madame Giry that kind of pushes her forward in the book. She kind of just, it's not explained how she gets it. So in both, the first leading performance of Christine stirs Raoul up as he finds her magnificent and then realises that he does in fact know her from when they were children. In the book, Raoul is the younger brother of the Count, who we hear about, and we kind of hear about him throughout the film as well, throughout the book as well, but in the film he's never mentioned. Now, in the book, Raoul hears a man's voice in Christine's dressing room, and he walks away heartbroken because he thinks Christine has somebody, and he wants Christine, and he loves Christine. And then obviously we find out later it's the Angel of Music, the Phantom, the Psycho. But in both, the opera house is changing hands because the old owners are just sick of the Phantom. So they've decided to sell it on to somebody else and been like, off you pop, I'm no longer having anything to do with this. So then in the book, it's a bit strange. So the Phantom is more present in the book than he is in the film. So in the book, he actually sits down with the new owners and explains everything. In the film, he just keeps dropping down letters signed by himself with instructions that Madame Giry reads out to everybody. But in both, the instructions are set out and the new owners sort of laugh at them, believing them to be a practical joke by somebody that they know. So they're like, yeah, this isn't happening. We're not paying a wage to somebody. We're not keeping a box open for somebody on the off chance they might arrive. We're going to sell that box. We're going to make the money. So in the book, the Phantom continues to send letters instructing Christine to be the lead and to leave box 5 open, but the new owners believe it's a trick. In the film, Christine has been missing since the very first performance, as she was taken to the Phantom's lair and she passed out. So we do get Christine missing in the book, but it's a lot later. In the film, it's straight away after that first performance she disappears, and it's only Raoul that seems concerned that she's missing. No one else seems to be that bothered. They don't even want to admit it to anybody. But then you've still got Raoul, Carlotta, and the new owners are still receiving letters from the Phantom highlighting what they need to be doing to keep the Phantom happy. In both, you do get Madame Giry telling the new owners about what the Phantom wants and what happens when it's not done. In the book, Madame Giry is just an attendant. In the film, she is like the head, I don't know if it's a coach or whatever her role is, but she's kind of in charge of all the girls. So in the film, they let her go. They say, right, you're fired, because this is a joke. Like, obviously, you're doing this. But in the film, she's kept on because she's in charge of all the dancers. So in the book, we read of how Raoul and Christine met and grew up as children. And as Raoul heads off to the cemetery to meet Christine at the tomb of her father, again, this cemetery trip happens, but much later in the film. We learn about how Christine knows about the Angel of Music, whom she believes she believes that the Phantom is the Angel of Music, because her dad, before he passed, said he was going to send down the Angel of Music to train her, because her dad was big on music and Christine's big on music, so she believed that was her dad. Again, at this point, it's only been like 6 months in the in the book. In the film, it's been since she was a little girl. So anyway, in the film, Christine has now been returned to the Opera House by the Phantom, but she saw him behind the mask as well. So that's why she got returned, because she saw him behind the mask, and he was severely disappointed that she didn't want to live below the Opera House with a random person with a mask on. One thing I would say as well is the iconic sort of like half mask look from the musical. In the book, it's a full sort of like skull mask, as you can kind of see on the front here of the book. As I said, I'm trying to handle this book as little as possible. I still can't believe my hands turned orange. It took me ages to figure that out as well. But yeah, so we do learn in both for Raoul's love for Christine, which never really sways in the book. He gets upset at times and he feels like he's never going to be able to have her. And he does sort of feel like, oh, I'm fighting for her, but she loves another man, so I'll kind of let it go. Then he realizes that she's being held by this other man, so he fights for her. And his is unwavering. Christine's is kind of like all over the place. But in both, he loves her like unconditionally. Anyway, so as I said, in the book, Christine tells Raoul about the Angel of Music. He follows her to her father's grave. He hears a beautiful violinist, and then he passes out. So that's in the book. And in the film at this point, against the Phantom's wishes, Carlotta has been cast as the lead again, not Christine. So in the book, the Phantom has asked for Christine to be the lead and Madame Giry to be reinstated. And in both, the new directors ignore the Phantom's warnings and wishes and decide to carry on as they like, because obviously they're the directors of the Opera House. And then this leads to a cursed performance. So in both, Carlotta going on instead of Christine. She was unable to sing as something happened to her vocal cords. So you see the Phantom kind of switch out her sort of like throat spray to help clear the vocal cords with something else that kind of stops her being able to sing and makes it sound right croaky. So in the book, Carlotta runs off, Christine vanishes again, as she does, and a chandelier falls and kills someone. In the film, Christine takes Carlotta's place to finish. The Phantom then hangs the stagehands, which obviously has happened pretty much the first chapter of the book. And Raoul and Christine, after the performance, declare their love for each other on the roof because they thought they'd be safe, but the Phantom is everywhere and he's eavesdropping. So in the book, Madame Giry is reinstated and Raoul begins looking for Christine because obviously she's disappeared. And he hears how this angel of music has forbidden her to love anybody else. And as I said, you know, it is a case of like Raoul loves her unconditionally and always just wants her to be happy. So if, you know, the angel of music is what makes her happy, that's fine. But when he realizes she's not happy, that's when he kind of like bats for her, as almost. So in the book, Christine is found by Raoul, and then she begs him to meet her at the Masquerade Ball. So in the film, the Masquerade Ball is where Raoul and Christine actually announce their engagement. But in the book, Raoul sees the Phantom going around as the Red Death at the Masquerade Ball, and tries to confront him. Christine pulls him off to one side, and Christine bids Raoul goodbye, says she's, you know, never going to see him again. And then she disappears off through a mirror, and he hears the name Eric, which then sets him to go, okay, right, I need to find out who this Eric is. In the film, the Phantom crashes the ball and orders his own opera, Don Juan Triumphant, to be performed. Upon, however, seeing that Christine's engaged, the Phantom steals the ring, and then he's pursued by Raoul, but Madame Giry steps in and stops Raoul going after him, going, you don't want to do that. Like, you don't know the bottom layers of the opera house. You will get lost. You probably will die. And this is where in the film, Madame Giry explains that when she was a teenager, you know, the Phantom was misunderstood. He was like a young boy that was being mistreated, and he was deformed. So she broke him out and stashed him away in the opera house. So, you know, but in the book, Raoul is trying to get help with Christine by going to her patron and explaining that he knows what the Phantom is not what he seems. This causes another argument between Raoul and Christine, who Christine has reappeared at this point again, and is like, step out, back out of my personal affairs. You know, I've told you that it's over, even though she is sending mixed messages. So in the film, their love for each other as a show is, as I said, is beautiful and perfect, and in the book it's more of a tempest, which I love, because love isn't easy. It never is. Even if you've been with someone for so ever many years, it's never easy. So in the book, Christine and Raoul now have a secret engagement for some unknown reason, because Raoul is going off to join the Navy at some point, so they could have their secret engagement until Raoul has to bugger off, which is bizarre, but anyway. And in the book, we hear more of Christine's relationships. And in fact, she knows more about the Phantom in the book than she ever does know about him in the film. In the film, she still believes he's just the angel of music. She knows nothing else about him. In the book, she seems to know a lot more about him. So anyway, now in the book, Raoul and Christine are on the roof declaring their love for each other, and Christine is telling Raoul everything. And in the film, at this point, Raoul and the managers are planning to capture the Phantom, but in the meantime, Raoul guards Christine's chamber so that she may be safe. So we hear in the book now of the kidnapping of Christine to the Phantom's lair, and in the film we see this at the time of it happening. And in both, at some point, we learn that the Phantom has hidden himself away in the depths of the opera house because he's ugly and repels those around him, but also because he is a psycho in the book. Like, honestly, there's a whole other layer with the Persian. And in the film, it's because he's misunderstood. And this has caused him to become cruel and selfish in what he does. As I said, in the book, he's already cruel and selfish. So in the book, Raoul spends the day preparing to leave that night with Christine after the big performance. But during Christine's performance of Faust, she disappears from stage and no one knows where she's gone. This woman, honestly, you can't keep track of her. You'd put like a Fitbit or something on so you can track her. In the film, we get the scene where Christine goes to her father's grave, but she's driven by the Phantom when she goes to the father's grave. Raoul realises that she's been taken and charges after her on a horse. Oh, honestly. He then kind of fights with the Phantom, and then sort of says he's not the angel of music, and Christine is kind of a little bit upset. But anyway, so in the book now, at this point, Raoul is now trying to find Christine as he knows who has her, but not how to get to her. In the film, Christine now disappears, but with the Phantom while performing the opera that the Phantom falls on the directors. Raoul goes after her, but I believe the chandelier has crashed at this point as well. So in both, the police are now involved, finally. In the book, it's after the disappearance. In the film, it's while Christine is giving her final performance. And in the book, we learn of how Madame Giry seems to be closer to the Phantom than anyone else. Not by much, though. Not by much. And how the directors are now being driven mad by this Phantom. Because we see all this. We read all this in the book. And in the book, it's believed that the Count, Raoul's older brother, has abducted Christine. However, Raoul knows that it's not his older brother, the Count. He knows that it's the Phantom. He's just got to find out where the Phantom is staying. So anyway, in the film, Raoul goes after her below the Opera House into the Phantom's lair with Madame Giry, who shows him the beginning of the way and says, like, cover your eyes, and then she leaves him. Bye. He gets into a little bit of trouble. In the book, there is a character simply called the Persian, and it is he who leads Raoul into the depths to save Christine. Now, in both, as Raoul descends, he is told to keep his arm level with his eyes. I believe this is because, like, poisons are coming out and traps. Sorry about that. And in the book as well, we get a whole part where the Persian and Raoul is stuck in a torture chamber. And then the Persian we get a whole part of the Persian's perspective of how he knew the Phantom, and how the Phantom came to be here, and how he's cruel, and how he just created these torture chambers. As I said, psychotic. And we hear about him having we hear about Eric having murderous tendencies, and coming from a different country where the Persian saved his life by accident. And now he's trying to stop him because he saved his life, so he feels like a little bit responsible for all these deaths, which he should. In the film, as mentioned before, he was disfigured by a boy who was cruelly treated in a circus and rescued by Madame Giry, so it's a big, big difference. Anyway, in the book, the Phantom forces Christine to choose marriage or death for her and everyone in the Opera House. So he set up explosives around the whole Opera House, so either she marries him or he blows the Opera House to Kingdom Come and everybody dies. In the film, it's a choice between Raoul or him. If you choose Raoul, Raoul dies. If you choose me, Raoul lives, basically. So in the book, he seems a lot more unhinged than in the film. In both, Christine does agree to marry him to save lives. In the book, the wedding goes ahead and the Persian and Raoul are saved. In the film, the Phantom then decides that he's going to let Christine go because it's not fair, as he realises who has Christine's heart and it's not him. So anyway, the book ends with the Phantom visiting the Persian and telling him how he let Christine and Raoul go and get married, and then he passes on. He dies. The film ends with the opera burning down and seeing Raoul in 1919 visiting Christine's grave, showing that they had a long life together, and a single red rose left on the grave, insinuating that the Phantom is still alive. So the stories were similar in points, and the crux of the story was very similar. I could see why they didn't go as cruel with the Phantom in the musical as they did in the book. But honestly, in regards to plot, like they downgraded, they upgraded Madame Giry in the film. They got rid of the Persian completely, and I think that upgrade of Madame Giry is why they got rid of the Persian. He's a lot less unhinged. Christine doesn't go as missing as much. Like, there's not as much tempest within the relationships. So to be perfectly honest, I think for the narrative, although I loved both of them, I really did, the narrative gets a 5 out of 10 for me because it's not as close as you think it is. And obviously I'm not counting the fact that it's a musical because that's not an issue. But yeah, it's a lot more intense in the book than it is in the film, and I appreciate why they've done it that way. But yeah, so it gets 5 out of 10 from me. Now, obviously, if you agree or disagree with anything that I say, please do leave it below in the comments. Don't forget to click subscribe so you're alerted whenever a new video comes out. Don't forget to join, if you haven't already, the Facebook group, The Contented Narrative, or follow me on Instagram, The Contented Narrative. If there's any books, film adaptations you want to see, or any book reviews that you want to see, please, again, leave it below in the comments or send me a message and I can certainly get onto it. But until then, thank you so much, and remember to always keep it contento.